Deputy Boyd Barrett, please.
Taoiseach, first of all, can I just add my voice to condemn the outrageous treatment and events that have occurred for Tory Towie, and to call on the UAE government to immediately drop the charges and allow her to come home. It's absolutely outrageous. But I want to raise another issue with you. Taoiseach, this is the last week of the Dáil before the summer recess, and this is the last opportunity I will have to question you at Leaders' Questions. And for 6 weeks now, we have been calling, as have many in the opposition, have been calling on this government to have a discussion on the Housing Commission report, a report published in May, which is absolutely damning of the government's failure to address the housing and homelessness crisis. We got a commitment that you would do it, and you have not done it. Now, my question to you is the reason you don't want to discuss the Housing Commission report revealed in the budget parameters that were announced yesterday in the summer economic statement? Because what's absolutely clear to me is that the call of the Housing Commission to effectively double the output of housing to address the housing crisis and to dramatically increase the delivery of social and affordable housing, which is what they called for, is not provided for in the summer economic statement. Last year, the government allocated €5 billion towards housing for all. That was to deliver 33,000 houses, including about 16,000 social and affordable houses. €5 billion to deliver on targets that the Housing Commission say are half of what is needed. They say we have a 250,000 housing deficit and we need to build 60,000 houses a year and dramatically increase the proportion of social and affordable housing. Basic calculation, in order to do that, we would need an additional €5 billion, or close to it. But the government's additional expenditure on capital investment announced yesterday is €1.4 billion. And that's presumably not just for housing, because we need investment in schools, we need investment in water infrastructure, we need investment in special needs, disability. So what is announced yesterday, and the Minister said he's going to stick very tightly to this in the budget, is a fraction of what is necessary to deliver on the increase in housing output necessary to address a housing crisis that has more than 14,000 people, including 4,000 children, in emergency accommodation, that has about 170,000 people on housing waiting lists, and has tens and tens of thousands of ordinary young and working people in this country completely locked out of a housing market that is out of control. So what do you say to that, Taoiseach? Are you actually, and is this government actually taking seriously the scale of the housing emergency, or are you just gaslighting the people? Because the money you have allocated for the budget to deal with this crisis is a fraction of what the Housing Commission said is necessary to address that crisis.
Taoiseach, please.
Thanks very much for that, Deputy Boyd Barrett. So this government takes the housing crisis and the housing situation extremely seriously. It is the biggest societal challenge we face, and it's an intergenerational one that causes significant anxiety across the country. But of course, you know we take it seriously, and you know some of the figures that you never mention when you stand up here to speak on this issue, and that's your prerogative. But we're now living in a country where over 300 homes every single working day are going to construction. We're living in a country where over 500 people, individuals and couples, are buying their first home every single week. And we saw, contrary to the assertion that you put out there, the largest number of social houses allocated any time in my lifetime, and you go right back to the 1970s to find a figure higher. So you'd get this impression out there from your narrative that none of that's actually happening. Commencements are up, completions are up, planning permissions are up, and there are real reasons to believe now that we can credibly lift the scale of ambition. And this point I agree with you on, that we do need to lift the scale of ambition in terms of the number of homes that we wish to build over the course of the next 5 years. And the Housing Commission report, which I say respectfully, you somewhat wrap yourself, and I don't believe you agree with all of its recommendations either, and if you do, that would represent a very significant policy shift on your part, because it talks about the need to support small landlords. It talks about the need to have private development as well, and private funding of development too, neither issue that I've heard you advocate for in this House before. So what we will now do is, yesterday government agreed the draft National Planning Framework. That, coupled with the ESRI research that was published last week, will enable us to set new housing targets this autumn. We absolutely look forward to debating with everybody in this House how those new housing targets are delivered and are exceeded. I think when you reference the figure of 5 billion, and I say this respectfully, I think it's a little disingenuous, because as everybody knows, the Summer Economic Statement only outlines spending from the Exchequer. It doesn't include any planned activity from the Land Development Agency, an agency which we've already capitalised significantly. It doesn't provide any indication of funding for the Housing Finance Agency. It doesn't provide any indication of the funding that's available through the European Investment Bank. And whilst it might be an anathema to you, it also doesn't provide any indication of the fact that private developers and builders will also build homes in this country as well. And you know what? That's okay too. So actually, it's not just the state that builds houses, and it's not just the direct exchequer that funds the building of houses. We as a government have provided capital funding for housing in 2024, coupled with the LDA, coupled with the Housing Finance Agency at, as you acknowledged in fairness to you, a record €5 billion, the highest ever in the history of the state. And I fully accept, and the Minister of Public Expenditure and Reform fully accepts, and the Minister for Finance fully accepts, and the Minister for Housing fully accepts, and the three parties in government accept, we'll need to do more. But how we do that, we will work with this Oireachtas on in the autumn when we set out the housing targets.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Deputy Boyd Barrett.
You see, you haven't answered the question. Yes, is there more house building? Yes. Is there a bit more social housing? Yes. But the Housing Commission is saying we need to double it, as against your targets. That's what it's saying. And the 5 billion I referenced, I know damn well the LDA is included in that, and the Housing Finance Agency, but that total figure was due to deliver 33,000 houses, including about 16,000 social and affordable. Now, if we're to do what the Housing Commission says, we have to double that from all sources. The private developers will do what they're going to do or not do, as the case may be, but we have to deliver the social and affordable housing to address those who are in emergency accommodation, to address people who are on housing waiting lists for decades, and to address the problem of working people being unable to afford astronomical house prices. You have not provided the money that can do that, based even on your previous investment in housing for all. You need to double it, which is what we and others have been saying for years, and it is now confirmed by the Housing Commission. I don't agree with everything they say, but they are right about the level of housing delivery. So why are you not allocating the money? And if you say you don't have the money, you have it in terms of the budget surplus, the infrastructure funds, and you can impose a wealth tax like the French people are asking for now after the recent French election with the Popular Front in France.
So firstly, we didn't need the Housing Commission to tell us we needed to increase the housing targets. I mean, before I... Well, hang on a second, we're doing it, but we do it in a kind of clear, methodical, evidence-based way. So I very clearly announced before I became Taoiseach that we needed to build 250,000 more homes between 2025 and 2030. Many people scoffed that, not people in this House in fairness. Many people scoffed that, said it wasn't possible, wasn't going to be credible. Now we have ESRI research, we have Housing Commission reports, we have the view of the CIF, all indicating that it is absolutely possible for Ireland, all parts of Ireland, not just the public sector, to deliver 50,000 homes on average a year from 2025. And I think, I don't speak for any other party, but I think there's a growing political consensus that that's where we need to get to. I'm very clear that we are going to need funding mechanisms and more funding mechanisms to how we do that. And we have a number of work streams underway under the remit of the Cabinet Committee on Housing to prepare for the publication of the new targets. We'll be back here in the autumn with the benefit of the public input, and I hope your own, on the draft National Planning Framework, with the ESRI research, where the Minister for Housing will outline how he intends to raise the targets and a level of granular detail in terms of how we intend to go about that. And it's not fair to suggest that the Summary Economic Statement portrays the full picture in terms of capital investment on housing. It doesn't.